data from the lab measurements. It can be images because people have, CT scans, X-rays, and so on, and this combined together to, for example, do early disease diagnosis, to optimize treatment strategies, or to extract patient-specific information, and in general, to advance the understanding of health and disease. Now, all these data-driven approaches, AI approaches, leverage the knowledge from large-scale clinical data set to address these challenges, to the disease prediction and so on. So to effectively develop these methodologies, we need to really do in-depth data analysis and understanding. So we first start from the data always. The knowledge is in the data. So we need to analyze the data in detail. Then significant effort on our side goes on data consolidation and pre-processing, meaning how do we handle missing data? How do we put all the data that we have together? How do we remove outliers? How do we deal with noise? How do we extract structured information from unstructured? Like how do we get all the disease diagnosis from the medical report, which is text? And often, if we use data from different sources, we also need to do data harmonization, because if you have multiple sources, then they use the same information is available in different formats. They use different terminologies, different variable definitions, different maybe units of measurements, and so on. And all these steps we perform together in very, very close collaboration with clinicians, meaning domain experts.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Very interesting and very cohesive as well. Maybe now we can hear from Stefan and Medicusdata. So how does Medicusdata actually fit into this whole scheme, and how do you actually enable health data to be structured? Maybe you can tell us a bit more about Medicusdata and what you do there.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually the way we started was not so much structured. It was really a dictation solution with which we wanted to give doctors a qualitatively higher and a little bit more cost-effective solution compared to what they have today. But then on top of that, we now have built a couple of modules that actually allow doctors to also structure either their thoughts or conversations that they have with patients, so that you can have through our dictation solution the entire transcript of a conversation that you have with a patient, for example. But then can also actually have this as a completely structured output where we integrate with any PIS and KISS that's on the market. And then on top of that, we also have a product for specialists that is not only speech to text, but often they get information about patients via an email, and that email has a PDF. And there we essentially extract the Stammdaten, medication, and diagnosis out of this. And then the doctor can write this automatically into all browser-based practice information systems. And that then essentially saves a lot of time versus when they had to do it by hand. Exactly. So those are essentially our solutions. And I think the one thing that we saw, and we're going to talk about a bit later, is as well that key to all of this is not only extracting the data, which is quite good, doable with the AI tools right now, but also the actual integrations into the different systems.
Exactly. Thank you so much for highlighting that. It will indeed be the focus of a bit of the later discussion. Maybe now, Jannis, maybe you want to also share a bit more about 44 AI. I know you also have some touch points with similar perspective than Medicusdata, but also a different focus as well. So maybe you can also share a bit insights here.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, more or less, we are also more a bit on the applied side, like Steffen from Medicusdata. So our solution is kind of similar. So we also look at it like there's a lot of unstructured health data, essentially, what is a real world issue today. And we have pipelines for either texts and documents, or sound, audio, ambient, spoken, like medical conversations. We then break this down in a controlled way into structured elements. And from this structured foundation, we fundamentally then also enable downstream tasks like report generation, like intelligent cockpit. And we have multiple use cases. We are in clinics, we are working with insurances, we're also working with EPR closed providers. And as Steffen said, we will later come to this issue. It's the technical problem, as you all know, working in the healthcare space is more or less 20% of the solution. And then it's about integrating, about education, about getting people on board to this solution. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Maybe you can all just tell a tiny bit more exactly how you actually use artificial intelligence to extract the essence of the health data. So a lot of the noise, you kind of already started to talk about it, but a lot of the data comes in a very big amount, very noisy and so on. So how do you actually leverage this technology to really be able to extract the essence of the data? Maybe we can go back to Jasmina first, so I have a bit of the perspective and how you do it on a research perspective as well.
So we really use like machine learning and deep learning approaches that are actually made for extracting relevant insights patterns from huge amounts of data. So these methods really see if you have like hundreds of variables, like they really have the capacity or the power to actually connect or correlate all the different, or check out all the different combinations and, you know, the different thresholds and different values that make up or that are indicative of a certain disease and so on. So we really kind of implement or develop, even innovate actually such methods, or we combine several methods together depending on the application that we have. So for example, if you have early disease diagnosis, then you take, you know, all the relevant information that you've extracted from your PDFs, from your clinical conversations, from your images and so on. So then as I said, we try to really merge as many information as possible. That is how also clinicians work, right? They don't just use one, like one source, but they really combine many different tools that are important for their diagnosis, many different data or information from different data modalities. And then we try to develop methods that effectively extract patterns from every single of this modality and then effectively combine them to do, for example, early disease diagnosis. We also aim for method explainability. So we always start with simpler methods and then move to more and more complex methods, such that we, as much as possible, also kind of can provide also insights into the decisions that the methods take. Yeah. So really, we develop methods that work with the multimodal data and extract patterns. They learn patterns from huge amounts of data related to the outcome or to the goal they're trying to achieve, like disease prediction or treatment optimization. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Maybe we can go now, Jannis first, to share a bit your perspective of how you do so, and then we'll go to Stefan to change a bit.
Yeah, so I think one thing we have to be a little bit careful is to take one step back and look a bit in the history, because it's not the first time in the healthcare space we are here. Most of you probably know the famous IBM Watson that failed. A lot of brilliant mind, a lot of money has been spent on. So it's not an easy problem, as Jasmina said. And fundamentally, the issue one has if deploying this on a large scale is what we say controllability and trust. So in the end, you need something like an audit trail. Because medicine is not black and white. And the standard approach today we see that a lot of companies adopt this kind of prompt and pray. Let's hope it works. And it's very effective. But if you think about the grand scale and think a bit beyond that, we have to be very, very careful about this, because we do very distinct decisions with the current models, and this can be careful. So what we do is we essentially reintroduce this controllability through guided generation into the new models, because we need the context understanding of the new models. For example, is it a person in the family? Has the procedure been done or not? And all this stuff. So we combine this together. We always bring you the references. We always make it reproducible. And all these three pillars together, we build this in the system, and we want to be the first with this foundation to be certified as a medical product in this AI clinical assistant healthcare extraction vertical.
Perfect. And how far are you in the process of getting validated? Can you already share?
So we have an external audit in April. So this will be for ISO 13485. And then we will do part module certification, and we hope that the core piece structure engine to be final certified end of this year, probably Q1 2026.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And maybe Stefan, you can also share your perspective and how you're kind of working in this space and extracting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just saw there was also a question from Frank about like what are the most advanced technologies that help structure health data with AI. And I think you know, one very important thing for us at least, or that also led to us getting into the structured game, was really advancement of large language models and the really abundance of open source models that are out there right now that really become twice as good and half as expensive every month. And so for us, really, we see our work as number one, figuring out what is actually the best model for which use case. And to answer your question, Frank, that basically changes every month. So right now, Mistral models are quite good. But if Llama 4 is set to come out like within the next couple of weeks or months, that might set another benchmark. And then our job is really to find out what are the edge cases that we need to solve to get from like the 70-80% accuracy that these models get by themselves to 95, 96, 97%. To really deliver number one, an experience that is compliant, but also one that is really usable by doctors in their daily lives.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Maybe I can add,
yes,
can I
go
add
for
something
it.
here?
Yes.
Because I think we completely agree. Steffen already alluded to it. And most of the people now notice it with the DeepSeek moment. This was basically the foundation why I quit my PhD 1.5 years ago, is that model are a commodity now. So everyone has basically access. So it's a level playing field. Everyone has basically access to the same model. But it's about, as Steffen said, and I completely agree with his analysis, it's about how can we make this enterprise-grade solution? How can we control it? And how can we make sure that no catastrophic error happens? That's
Perfect. Thank you so much. I think you already, in your presentation, Jannis, touched upon it, but I want to go back to the electronic patient record. So we know this is a bit of a complex situation in Switzerland to kind of make the electronic patient record fly, but it is a very crucial and core element of the healthcare system. A lot of people do criticize that a lot of the data there is unstructured. It's often in PDF. So I'm wondering a bit how your different solution or the work you're doing at ZHAW, Jasmina, can actually leverage and benefit the electronic patient record itself and the ecosystem around it to really be able to structure the data. So maybe, Jannis, since you touched upon it in your initial presentation, you maybe can start here.
Yeah, for sure. So fundamentally, I think all our solutions have the benefit to bring in this, let's say, dead garden some life and make it actually like, I mean, if you think a bit, what is the vision of this EPR, EPD, however you want to call it, is that once only the healthcare professionals could just access the history, have all these data points that are needed to make a more fundamentally like decision. And I believe that in terms of technological solutions, we are more or less there. I mean, it's now about certification, about how can we deploy this on scale. But then beyond that, as I said in the beginning, most of it is actually a political challenge. So you know how it is. There is a lot of regulation on the EPR itself. So a lot of the solution providers these days that we talk to are building kind of a layer on top of it. Then a lot of solution providers are building their own solutions. I do believe it was a good decision by the government to say, hey, we centralized the core infrastructure, the data storing, and let the solution provider build on top of it. But as you know, this will take another 3 to 4 years. And if I had a wish, it would be that the political system and decisions and the guidance would be a little bit faster. But I know that is not that easy.
Yeah, no, it is a very complicated ecosystem to be in. But so you're ready at the moment to be able to integrate to the electronic patient record if the regulations were there?
So fundamentally, we are talking with EPR providers exactly about this. So it's not a fairy tale. It's actually about becoming a reality. But then in the end, it's more or less about, navigating this regulatory field, which takes time.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know, Steffen or Jasmina, if you want to add upon it and how the skills you have or how what your work is doing, how this could benefit the electronic patient record or your wish for the electronic patient record, you can kind of maybe share your thoughts there. I don't know who wants to go next.
I can go. Yeah, maybe to put in a perspective from, I mean, we're in, dozens of practices and hospitals like every month, and like probably over the past year it was like hundreds. And the thing that we kind of saw with the EPR is actually, if you look at it from a technological point of view, the EPR is not that badly built, and it's actually a very interesting piece of technology, where you essentially enable different organizations to offer it, but you kind of have the same data foundation on it. Like, it's a very interesting decentralized system. I think the issue is a little bit that, you know, people were very much thinking about like, okay, how do we store this most securely, etc., and not so much about like, okay, how can we actually get stuff in? And you know, obviously, one puzzle piece can be the structuring of the data, right? I mean, we've seen in hospitals where, you know, there are 2-3 people whose only job is to essentially create the metadata for the uploads in the EPR. And so obviously there, you know, structuring this, etc., can help. And there's also super helpful things out there. Like we, for example, integrated with the EPR playground, which then, you know, is a very good sort of jumping board into actual EPR implementations. I think it can only be one puzzle piece, though. Like I think the biggest issue here is how can we make it as easy as possible for patients to sign up, and how can we make it as easy as possible for doctors to submit data? And I think that's something that's, you know, that still needs to be figured out. You also see this with other solutions that don't suffer from as much regulatory scrutiny as the EPR, like, for example, Compassana, etc. You know, it's like Compassana is integrated in Axenita. It's used in practices, or it's available to practices. It's not that used so, right? So obviously there must be something around the UI UX that must improve a little bit. And I think, yeah, as I said, it can be a puzzle piece, but I don't think, like, you know, it's only the political environment that led to where the EPR is right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steffen. Jasmina, any thoughts, perspective you want to share here as well?
Maybe in line with Steffen's, really, it will be great if it was really populated with data, like large amounts of data, and used both by patients and clinicians, such that we can also use it further to actually improve or transform healthcare, so to say. So currently there is very few data in there. I mean, there are other issues like political and technological, but from the sense on that data are unstructured, I mean, technologically, we have models like with the LLMs, really, you can really easily extract structured data from the unstructured and vice versa. So one can also easily have models that from historic patient records, from PDFs and everything, also easily populate this. But yeah, as I said, like from my side, I mean, I'm not at the hospital or at a startup. I work with the data I get from the hospitals. So it will be nice if, you know, all the patients' data are centered at one place where we can all access them, and we have all the history for us and for the clinicians and for the patients, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Now I have a question, one specific question for each of you, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. I saw there's already things happening on the chat. Do feel free to add in even more, or you can also then just ask your question directly when we'll open the Q&A just after this. One quick question here, Jannis. You already told us a bit about the different hurdles that you're encountering and so forth, but how do you actually enable the data you're working with to be sure that it's like linked to the international standards? What other hurdles do you have than regulations? What are the things that are on your daily plate that you have to tackle with?
So the first thing is international standards. What is an international standard? I think there's a lot of discussion ongoing, and it's developing. And I think IGE Health, and they are doing a fantastic job in like laying out what the standard should be for Switzerland and how we adapt from the international FHIR or OpenEHR standard. So how we deal with that is we have an internal representation. At the end, we just have a mapping path to what the customer wants fundamentally. So that's kind of what we have to work around. And in the end, for us, it's also, we see that there's changing landscape. So you talk one week with, yeah, it's OpenEHR, we are fully committed. And then the other week, yeah, we know we have this tool that is only FHIR compliant. So it's just a changing landscape. So that is one of the, let's say, hurdles we have. But I also understand it's such a fast moving field, and what you make decisions now for the next 20 years. And I also understand that that's how it works. In the end, if you have like a big ship, you cannot just move it around very quickly. So that are the big hurdles, and the other ones are, as you know, people that work in this field for a long time. There are a lot of people that build their own gardens, and I mean, this is probably one of the main issue why EPR also takes that much time to get off the ground. And we have to build an incentive structure for the EPR or EPD, that for doctors it's cheap and they see value in it, because as soon as we have something like that, they will use it. And we believe that by bringing life to this data, that it just can quickly check what was the history of this patient. I want to search for that. I find it. With that, we can bring this value into the system for the patient and for the healthcare providers.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jannis. Now, Stefan, I was wondering, we already kind of talked a little bit about it, but you can share a bit more information around the whole integration of the different data that you're structuring into the hospital primary system. So how are you doing this? How is this actually reducing the administrative burden of healthcare professional and so forth, which is actually one of the goals that we, that are required here. So maybe you can share a bit more information around this step.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry for the little advertisement. I just changed my background to this little QR code if people want to follow us.
Maybe if you mirror it after, because it's we see it in
it's upside down.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's
the other way around.
Yeah, exactly.
How about this?
This, perfect.
Okay. Basically, I think there are 2 points to this. Number one, for us, it was really important to deliver value to the doctor sort of directly without any training, etc. And so step 1 to really get into the practices, hospitals, was like, okay, what's a super big pain point? And the biggest pain point was, a lot of practices either use Dragon and they don't find the quality very good and they find it's way too expensive. Or they weren't using it because they found it too expensive. And so we're like, okay, let's make sure we expand the access to dictation software. And so the next step is now, okay, where can we provide value, where we need to provide also a little bit of training for doctors, where, they need to change their behavior a little bit in terms of like, how do I read in my documents? How do I actually get the data out of the documents into the practice information systems? And then sort of the last step of this whole thing is essentially creating solutions where not only doctors need to change a little bit their ways, but clinic and practice information systems as well, right? And so for the first 2 solutions I just talked about that we have on the market right now, we integrate directly via the operating system. So we integrate via Windows and Mac. And you can actually do a lot of stuff with that. You don't need sort of an API of the clinical desktop system in order to, write things into specific fields. You can do all of this with very low-level sort of operating system commands, which is exactly what we're doing. At some point, we would like to also have a little bit of a closer collaborations with like KISS and PISS providers, just because I think for the go-to-market, it's not bad. But we just saw, okay, in order for us to really have a viable business that is independent, we need to have a solution that can integrate with PISS and KISS without actually having deep integrations from them. We actually find that not only work our integrations better than some things we see on the market that integrate with a sort of native integration, but we can also be much faster, right? Because we never have to wait for these guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much for shining some light around the topic. There now to you, Jasmina. So how do you at ZHAW really try to build bringing all the different perspectives, the building blocks to create AI products that are easy to understand, trustworthy, and that can both benefit the data, but also the people that are behind it? That's my first question. And then maybe you can also just share a bit how you collaborate with startups, if this is something that you also do, so that you can maybe also, this can also be of good essence for Stefan and Jannis and others in the audience.
Yeah, great, thanks. So regarding the trustworthiness and transparency and so on, when addressing a new task, like let's say early disease prediction or something else, then I always prioritize really starting with like simpler models. I don't immediately take the most complex thing that's out there just because, it's published and everyone uses it, but we really start with really this inherently interpretable or simpler machine learning models that are based on ensembles of decision trees or interpretable decision sets or risk-based approaches and so on. And then, starting with those models, it's also important to have a baseline because, if you take the most complex models, even if it delivers some performance, you don't know, you don't have a reference. And then if these methods really fail to deliver satisfactory performance, really this checked back with the domain experts, with the clinicians we work with together, very, very close always. Then we explore really more complex, like these deep learning models, these transformers that are behind all the ChatGPTs and the LLMs. And there, they are not inherently interpretable. They are not interpretable out of the box. There, we work also in the direction of like developing techniques or taking techniques that are out there and adjusting them to our use case to provide as comprehensive explanations as possible by integrating different kind of multiple perspective of explainability. For example, we look a lot into feature and concept importance, like tailored toward an image, if it's like parts of image that we highlight, or pieces of text that we highlight, or time series, like certain trends in the time series that we highlight. Then we use counterfactuals, which value should change how to change the outcome. We use mimicry also, you know, how can we use the bigger model, but for a small area, try to develop a simpler model, like a decision tree or an ensemble of decision trees that mimics the behavior of the bigger model, and so on. But really always taking the temporal aspect and the modality aspects of the data, with the aim being to deliver really clear and human understandable interpretations, often in a text format with images and with pointers, like highlighted images in between. So we use also a lot of LLMs for the explanations, for generating the explanations that bring together all these different aspects of explainability to the user in a human understandable format. We also have a group here that focuses on certification of AI systems. So how do we develop like measures on how to make how do we measure if a system is interpretable and robust and it's not biased and so on. So we also have a lot of work on responsible AI and certifying AI systems. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jasmina. And how do you collaborate with startups as well?
Exactly. So the last part is often we do applied research. We're an applied university, so really we start from the application always. So that's why we also collaborate a lot with, you know, startups, with middle-sized companies also. The easiest way is InnoSwiss projects. So InnoSwiss projects are really very well suited for practically relevant problems that are challenging, that have a research perspective on it. And then it's also interesting for us, and it also brings something to the industry partners. We do also SNF sometimes with industry partner. There's also this bridge that's between kind of SNF and InnoSwiss, or we can also do we also do projects with direct funding. So if a company doesn't want to go through the effort of writing a proposal to SNF, we also do like shorter term projects. One can do a 1 year prototype project. So we do collaborate a lot with industry. So if anyone is interested, I would be very interested, especially in the health domain. So I'm very interested in the health domain.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jasmina. So these were our questions so far. I would now hand the word to Cecile, which has, I'm sure, looked into the chat for all your questions, but also feel free if you want to speak to raise your hand if you want to ask your question yourself. But yes, Cecile, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jade. Yes, there are some questions in the chat. Let's start with the question from Frank Kalberg in the very beginning. One of the questions was already answered, but the follow-up question was how you address ethical concerns in your models, such as bias in algorithms. I don't know who would want to answer this question. Maybe Jannis?
Yeah, I can give a quick answer to that. So fundamentally, what we try to do, and maybe I skipped around a little bit to that, is so the baseline is we use the LLMs that are out there. So then for most of them, you can do like simple bias checks, but what we not do is train on the weight level of the LLMs. Because as soon as we do that, you generate a trade-off you do, and that's probably what you're alluding to, is you get very domain specific, very good. But especially in the healthcare domain, it's really, really important that you have the generality, because there are, I don't know, a million ways to say the same things in a different way. So it's very important to have this generality. And that is also, in our opinion, why let's say, NLP methods from the 2010s, what IBM Watson was built on failed because this generality was not there. So this is a very relevant question, and how we tackle that is by just not using our data in a sense that we train the model. We do that like a level above by ingesting this knowledge.
Maybe there, the follow-up question from Frey just now is, where do you find good quality and sufficient data to train your applications? We also heard from Jasmina the issue of having to remove data and adding missing data. So maybe Jasmina, you would want to add your perspective here.
Yes. So for the medical domain, yeah, data is a big issue. And then for AI-based methods, really, as I said, the knowledge comes from the data. I work a lot with Swiss hospitals. So I get the data I have really directly from the hospital. Of course, we need to do the ethical agreements and all these things. It's like it requires a pre-effort to get access to this data. And on the other side, I also work with publicly available data. Like PhysioNet has a lot of publicly available data. Of course, they are only available for research purposes, not for commercialization often. UK Biobank has a great data set. There are several biobanks also in Germany. Here in Switzerland, there was the SPHN initiative that is trying to bring data together. There are cohorts, like I work a lot with the Swiss HIV cohort, super well-maintained data set, like curated and collected over several decades. So yes, there you need to really work closely with hospitals. So on my side, really, I work closely with hospitals here in Switzerland, and I also use publicly available medical data, which are really much more compared to like 10 years ago when I started in the health domain. But it is
maybe
Yeah.
one thing to combine the two questions a little bit on data quality, but also bias. I think one thing that we in Switzerland, but also generally in the Western world, we can be really happy with is that there's so much data available and out there that also the like Jannis mentioned before, the foundational models that are sort of being used to do all this are very well trained for sort of our everyday use cases, right? I do think if you think about regions that are not that technologically advanced, there you have like much less data that is available freely on which all of these models can be trained. And so of course when you then ask for categorizations etc. in that domain, right, you will probably not get the kind of quality of answers that you basically get here for free at that point, right? On top of which, of course, you still need to build your safeguards, etc. But sort of the base level that you get is already much better, like let's say for a patient in Switzerland compared to less affluent regions of the world.
Yeah, maybe I can add something. I completely agree. So what we do internally, essentially what you want to build in the structure engine is, as the question alluded to, a completely unbiased system. Fundamentally, if it's medically wrong, you still want to report that these let's say structured elements were written down, even though it completely makes no sense. Because you just want to be completely unbiased in getting the data that was actually how it was written down. So what we do there is we built a synthetic pipeline where we fundamentally generate a synthetic structure, then generate the data, go with different noise added, with different writing style, whatever, and then we go back to structured data, and with that we can close the loop, and with that we can also get out of this valuation hell. Because what is state-of-the-art valuation these days? You get domain experts looking at the data, either labeling it, or for a report you even have to read it. And if you think beyond, for medical product certification, we have to have a quick and validation loop that we can use to actually update a product, and not every time need 100 domain experts for the next release, in a sense.
Very interesting. Maybe there a follow-up question from Micha Kleinberger, which is also related to the data or the abundance of data that we have, that in the EPD at the moment is only for the patient. but we could further process this data for research or AI-driven analysis. The question there is, how do we get there? More of a future-oriented question. Who would like to take the question? Steffen.
I have a very strong opinion there, because what we see when we talk to people in the EPR space, etc., I think they're very much the sense, and I mean that's also what it is built for, right? Is like the EPD is for the patients, and that's sort of the demographic that we serve, right? I think one of the big issues is that with the EPD, the ease of use for the doctor has not been thought about really. And in the end, if you don't have the support of all the doctors and medical professionals in Switzerland, right, it will be very hard to actually get a large population to sign up for it, right? So I think the first step, and that's happening in the first organizations that deal with the EPR already, is okay. So we have understood we need to make the EPR as good and easily usable as possible for the patient. What can we do for doctors, right? And that has, I also have to honestly say, not permeated into every organization that deals with it yet. But I think, the process is going on right now. And, I think this is a very, very important thing that will now also be discussed in the, novella of the EPD Gesetz, etc. And, once we're there, I think that's when the EPD will actually really take off.
Does someone else want to add something here, Jasmina or Jannis?
I can maybe add a little bit. So what we see today, I mean, there's this very highly regulated core piece of EPD that Steffen also told a lot about. And then in the end, you as patient are in control of the data. So what solution providers do these days, for example, with the ePost app, you see it, is they kind of build an island besides this EPD, where you have like this data storage, the highly secure data storage. And then you as a user essentially give access to this application, and then you do all the AI processing. And let's say if you want to use it for research, you can then share it with another partner, or if you want just for yourself with the medical health history, you do it in that, let's say, domain. So the data storage is handled in this highly regulated space, but then you as a patient, you still have the control of the data, and you share it with the application. That is what we are seeing in the field.
Mm-hmm. This also alludes to the question from Clemens Danda, that also wanted to know how you evaluate the European health data space regulation, and whether this will be helpful for research and development in the EU and Switzerland. Maybe there, Jannis, you kind of already mentioned the whole regulation part and data being more highly regulated than other aspects. Maybe someone else, Steffen or Jasmina, would you like to comment on this as well?
I don't know the very details of this regulation, so I cannot say much about it.
Sorry, so the question was, how will the EPD novella actually help in light of all the other regulation that is out there in the EU right now?
The question was the European health data space regulation. Whether
I actually think it's quite helpful, to be honest. I mean, I think yes, you can't just throw something on the market and like pray. But on the other hand, you also have to say, if you are determined to be in this space, there are enough niches where there are things on the market that you can actually find a very good entry into the market with a sort of not so regulated product, right? And then you build more and more and more on top of it. And I personally have to say, for us as a company, it's actually kind of nice because we can slowly but steadily build out our moat. You don't get a big problem of, like, sorry for the German word, like Scharlatane, who kind of destroy the reputation or future of a certain product or technology just because they're fast and something gets really badly fucked up. And then in the end, I think we're not that slow in the scheme of things, right? I mean, I think maybe the news cycle here is just a little bit slower, and so not everything gets hyped. But I like to often put out the comparison to, you know, the COVID era, where I don't know how it was I felt Switzerland was always quite on the forefront, but also if you read the news here, if you read them in Germany, if you read them in Austria, you always felt, oh, you know, we're behind the US and the UK. And effectively what happened, like we got it exactly, I think 3 weeks, like after, like I think on average people here got vaccinated 3 weeks after the first people got vaccinated in the UK and in the US. And so, you know, I think there is some truth to it, that it makes things a little bit harder, but I think all in all, as long as it's kind of thought through, and especially the like Ausführungsbestimmungen make sense, I think it's actually, it's good guardrails, you know?
Maybe moving away from the regulation question and more into the opportunity sphere. Daniel Kefai, he asked, now looking at the huge advancements in AI and Gen AI, where do you see the role, or how do you see the role of Gen AI in improving diagnostics or treatment of diseases, or also disease prediction? Maybe Jasmina, would you want to?
Yeah, so maybe the easiest, or this low-hanging fruit maybe, is really like using Gen AI to just to provide a fast overview of the whole patient's history when one does a diagnosis, and all the relevant thing is something that, I mean, I have several friends that are really clinicians, and they say that it really takes them a long time. Like when a patient with chronic diseases with a longer history comes, that's really also difficult to diagnose. And, you know, this takes them really just a long time just to gather all the information. They're sure it's not complete because they come from different doctors and everything. Just putting like just this effort, like also that just putting everything together and providing really easy access to the specific information or summary, or like being able to ask everything and getting like an overview of a patient within 5 minutes instead of, you know, half an hour, would already be a great step forward. Another thing for the AI, for the like early diagnosis of diseases and so on, I find it great that now like there are tools that can integrate really efficiently or can extract efficiently information from all these different modalities and deal with, you know, time series data and images and so on. And this combined with, you know, available data sets that are out there, I think, I mean, there are even like several diseases, there are now models that can do very good early prediction of many different diseases. But they're really only few of them are used in clinical practice. So I think we need to work, I think like technologically, we have a lot out there that we can use and combine. And it's just that bringing all this to the hospital and to the, you know, to the patients, I think that we have still a lot of work to do there, I guess.
Thank you. I will ask one more question before handing back to you, Jade. So here we see from Frey, he or she asked, how do you see the integration of your concepts or product services into the future Swiss health data space? According to the documents published today, will you be consulted on this by DigiSanté? Probably this question is mainly oriented towards Medicusdata and 44AI. Does someone of you two want to answer this?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, in the end, you know, we integrate with everything that people are using. You know, if we see that this actually gains traction, and you know, with this, we can easier integrate with different KISS, with different PIS, with different, like, you know, hospital-specific tools that they have, then obviously we will adopt it. And so, yeah, are we gonna do it? Yes. Like if if we see, okay, this is a little bit of a Karteileiche, then we will probably be a little bit more hesitant. But I mean, so the short answer is yes. I'm not sure if we're going to get consulted for it by DigiSanté, but let's see.
Yeah, maybe I can add a little bit. So I haven't seen the document published today yet, but fundamentally, I think I completely agree with Steffen. So I think we are fully aware that alone we cannot change the system. So it's about integrating, it's about fitting into the current space, and hopefully make a step towards a more, let's say, interoperable healthcare space with what we can do in our means. I think that's pretty basically sums up our approach, and every approach that goes in that direction lies in our strategy direction, and we will support.
Thank you so much for this Q&A. Not all questions could be answered, but also thank you to all the participants for being so active. This is always fun. And here I hand back to Jade.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cecile, and thank you all for being so interactive, asking so many questions. And I'm sure that the others, not just Steffen, which put the QR code behind him, but I'm sure all of the other speakers are also available if you want to reach out to them later on with a very specific question. But maybe just before we close off, one last question for all of you. What is your hope in one sentence for the future of healthcare? Jasmina, you can go first.
For me, my hope is really to bring these AI tools for that I'm working on for early disease diagnosis, for patient-specific information extraction, for treatment optimization in the clinic and help patients. Like this would be really my hope and vision, and yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I don't know who wants to go next. Also, just keep it short. One thought, one sentence. Your gold star, whomever, Steffen, Jannis.
Cool, yeah, I can go next. I'll have two sentences. So
Okay,
I actually think it will be very hard to keep the current level of care given the demographic change, etc. And so I actually hope that with these tools, we are actually able to stabilize this, despite the fact that we will, lose thousands of like healthcare workers over the next years to retirement. And so my vision, even though it's not really a vision, is that we're capable to maintain the level of care and slightly improve it.
Perfect, thank you. And Jannis, your thoughts?
Yeah, so fundamentally, our slogan is "Let the expert be expert," and we hope that we can give a tiny, or hopefully a bigger step towards the direction that the healthcare expert can actually work on health problems and not on everything else.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I'll share now once again the slides just to capture as well. We want to see if you can scan this QR code or use the code on Mentimeter. And then I will just showcase the answers. So we're just kind of curious about what are your learnings from today's session. So yeah, I'll give you an extra second to scan the QR code or use the code, and then see a bit what's coming up in our Mentimeter. Okay. Sorry. For now, we don't have any answers yet, but I'm sure it will come soon. So that integration is key. Yeah, that for me was also a very big learning from today, because I think, as we said, we have a lot of the technologies, a lot of the elements, but it's all about how do we actually interconnect it within the system. Anyone else wants to join? Because that's, for the big group we are today, that's only one answer. So I shared again the code if anyone is still trying to share.
May I say a wish for the learnings?
Yes, sure.
So for me, it would be great if all of you basically also learned that, you can install Medicusdata within like 3 minutes on our website and try it out very easily. But,
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Then we see that there's, a lot of motivated startups in Switzerland. That's, I agree. We have a very prominent numbers of entrepreneurs. And the topic around data access in Switzerland and its complications, the whole, I think, DigiSanté and the garden to play there, but also we talked a lot about the different regulations and how politics in Switzerland can sometimes be a bit hindering as well. So I'm seeing lots of different perspectives pop up, but yeah, I think from our side as well, it was great to get all these different insights, and I do think that we're on a good path. So thankfully, with all of your smart expertise and work, we're on a good path, but there's still a lot to be done. And I guess the next 2 to 3 years are going to be very critical as well regarding the different regulations that are going to be put in place, the different decisions on a political level, and also the different technologies that are going to be developed. But we don't want to keep you too long as well. So feel free to still share some learnings into the tool. It's always helpful as well for us to see a bit what everyone takes home with them. But other than that, on behalf of myself and Cecile, we would like to, first of all, thank our 3 panelists a lot for their time and sharing their insights. So thank you so much, Jasmina, Jannis, and Stefan, and to all of you as well for taking the time today to be with us. And we hopefully look forward to seeing you soon in one of our other community talks. So thank you so much, and hopefully you can enjoy maybe a bit of fresh air and sun. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.